having car problems? Well, with Rhoda, getting them fixed is as easy as ordering takeout. They'll come pick up your car for free, do any repair or maintenance needed, and return it right to your driveway. They'll even give you a complimentary video inspection of your car so you can see what needs to be done. Perfect for those of us that maybe aren't so car savvy. Book your appointment online at roda.com. And lucky for you, CityCast listeners get a 20% discount on any service for up to $100 off. Just use the code CityCast20. Today on CityCast DC, more flights out of DCA, big changes to DC's buses, and is everybody in DC giving up on dating apps? To get into all of it, we're talking to CityCast producer Ash Durbin and Washington Business Journal's Nate Doty. Oh, and by the way, did you hear our interview yesterday with the city's budget director? If you didn't, you definitely should. Director Reed was really upfront with us about a bunch of the more controversial cuts to the city budget, like daycare teachers' salaries, for example, but we couldn't fit all of it into the episode, so we're putting out a special bonus feature for our beloved CityCast DC members. Sign up before Friday to hear how the city justifies cutting the circulator bus. That's going to drop later this week, so sign up now. Just head to membership.citycast.fm. Today's Tuesday, May 14th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. Okay, Nate, Ash, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Bridget.
Hey, thanks for having us.
So, Nate, I feel like we've been talking about changes to DCA for kind of a while. What exactly is going on?
Yeah, it almost is a never-changing conversation in terms of how many times we got to talk about this. So to paraphrase, there are only so many flights that can fly into and out of DCA in a given day. It's a very small airport, only 2 runways, only one of which can be operating at a time. And the FAA needs to have this reauthorization signed every 5 years. It's a massive package. It's a $105 billion deal that, among many things, keeps the FAA up and running. But as part of the process during this gamut of reauthorization, there was an amendment proposed to add additional flights at DCA. Again, this is an airport already at capacity. They want to add 10 additional flights that are long distance flights, because not only is DCA kind of limited due to its size and its geographic position, but it also has this perimeter rule imposed on it where only so many flights can have exceptions to being beyond the 1,250 mile radius for the airport. So to make a long story somewhat short, this amendment would allow for more of these long-distance flights to come into DCA, which, again, already a packed airport. And it just was rife with opposition from a local delegation of senators from Maryland and Virginia who were saying the airport is already at capacity. We don't need more flights here. And also safety concerns were paramount. There was an incident a couple of weeks ago at DCA where 2 aircraft almost collided on runway and taxiway intersection. But ultimately, the Senate kind of did a combination of approved the reauthorization and also passed a week-long extension to get some other stuff ironed out as it relates to, passing this big piece of package before it heads over to the president's desk. But nevertheless, there are more flights now coming to DCA. The if and when of it all is to be determined.
As somebody who hates schlepping out to Dulles or BWI, when I heard about this, I was like, oh, great. This is a win-win. More flights. Absolutely, yes. But it does seem like there might be some legitimate issues for why folks are not so keen about this idea.
Well, Bridget, you and many people in Congress have that same exact rationale, right? We have all these representatives from all over the country. They want to, have their direct nonstop flight to their far, west city. And I think it's about like 40 flights currently exist that can fly outside of this perimeter exception. Typically, airports are excited to get more flights. It means more business for them, more passengers. But officials at the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority have been, saying for weeks, if not, longer, that this is not something they want. They don't want more flights out of DCA. That's what, Dulles IED is designed for. The more long-range, long-haul flights, go out to Dulles, get them there. That's what that airport is capable of supporting, and it has the capacity to do so. But, people living closer to the city or people in Congress or their staffers, they don't want to go all the way out to, Dulles Airport. They want to fly directly out of National Airport. It's causing all kinds of problems. And from what I recall, There were 10 million more passengers out of DCA last year than the airport was actually physically designed for back, decades ago. And so that this is coming back to the thesis at DCA, or officials at MWA rather, saying this airport is at capacity. We can't do that. And furthermore, they're now saying it's likely that these carriers, Delta, American, United, the carriers who service DCA, could ultimately decide to cut back on some of these short haul flights if they have more permission to go farther away. And so that could come at the expense of some flights to certain state capitals could get cut if the carriers now have access to make more lucrative long haul flights out of National Airport.
So it could ultimately end up biting these Congress people in the butt who want to take their easy nonstop flight to, wherever. That could be a problem.
It could be. What's wild, though, is we won't really know for some time. From my understanding covering the aviation industry, carriers have to submit these proposals to have new flights months, if not almost up to an entire year in advance. So we know that these flights will be coming. We don't know, when that's going to be happening. But yes, it very well could come at the cost of some of these inside perimeter flights that maybe don't have their frequency, but have, the airport has the capacity to fulfill them. Because ultimately, the airlines can only have so many slots at DCA in general.
You said earlier that DCA is already not equipped for how many people are going through it. Are they going to have to expand, or is there going to be more runways, or are they just going to squeeze everything into the already overwhelmed airport?
They can't build more runways at DCA. It's just they don't have the land for it unless they maybe went into the Potomac River, but I don't think that's really in the cards. But what's also fascinating about DCA is that it has 2 runways. But because they're, bi-directional runways, because they cross, they can only use one at a time, which ultimately means they're landing about 800 planes per day. About 1 per minute on average is either taking off or landing at DCA. According to their figures, it's the busiest runway in the country, if not, one of the busiest in the world, just because of the fact they've only got effectively 1 runway at a time. And so they have nowhere else to go. MWA is saying, we're going to get more delays now. There's going to be more drama and more, backup as a result of the fact that we're trying to fit more flights in here. Yeah, you're going to get delays. You're going to get more cancellations. And if there's bad weather, it's going to be a bigger domino effect than it was before this.
I feel like flying anymore is just headaches and nightmares and delays and problems. And so I started this whole conversation really excited for more flights out of DCA, but now I'm like, if it maybe means more delays, I'm not so sure.
Well, Bridget, there is potentially some silver lining here too, right? So this FAA authorization, there is now pending final passage by the Senate, which is expected this week, or rather by the House. There are provisions in here that will allow for, or that require rather, the airlines to compensate you if your flight is delayed or canceled, if it's delayed significantly or canceled outright. There's different rules depending on if it's domestic or international flight. Those carriers are now required to compensate you for your time, essentially. It comes back to a few weeks ago when the Department of Transportation announced that it was going to start pursuing this as an option to try and hold these airlines accountable for trying to squeeze all these flights in or trying to have all these issues. But maybe the silver lining is that, okay, you get delayed at DCA because they're adding more flights, but maybe you get your money back or some kind of little bonus that in theory wasn't ever, authorized federally, legally before.
Nate, if I truly got into my feelings on this, we would be here for an hour. But let me just say this. It's high time that happened because the airlines will look you in your face and be like, oh, the ticket that you bought weeks ago and spent money for and that we confirmed, we sold too many tickets and now that flight is canceled. And guess what? We're not going to give you any money for that. They will look you in your face and tell you stuff like that. And it is high time that somebody has done something about it. So that is a silver lining. I like I said, I just got off of a whirlwind of travel, so I have a lot of strong feelings about this. But finally, a little accountability. They can't just cancel your ticket, delay you for hours, and then be like, oh, well, you shouldn't have booked with us. You're bad, I guess. Keep your money.
So, Nate, one last thing. Drew Hansen, your colleague, was on last week, and he was talking about how randomly, I guess, there was calls to attach the RFK bill to this to try to push it through at the last minute. Did that end up happening or?
No, it was kind of like a votorama all of a sudden. So this was such a significant bill that the politicians from all over the country wanted to attach, effectively what were riders or different amendments that were related or unrelated to the FAA. And it was this whole process of, do we vote on all these individual amendments? Do we end up just passing the reauthorization? What's wild too is the House approved this reauthorization last July. And it has been sitting in the Senate and was like the deadline for the Senate to pass this was May 10th, was last Friday. And so they got this extension, but nevertheless, they kind of just like put all those other amendments, and one of which was an amendment proposed by a local delegation of senators to at least then have a vote on this proposal to add more flights to national. But that never got a vote. The stadium situation will come up again. It just didn't make it through with this FAA reauthorization. They were running out of time. I think there were like 280 some amendments ultimately attached to the FAA reauthorization. And so they just decided, officials in the Senate were like, let's just try and get this through.
When was the last time you went to the theater? Well, we have a new show for you to check out. The Gala Theater in Columbia Heights is showing the political musical comedy Museum in the Closet, Evita's Return, which follows Argentine icon Eva Perón to the afterlife as her preserved corpse ignites political scandals, clandestine affairs, and mysterious murders. The show is full of samba, reggae, and tango that will have you tapping your feet nonstop. The show is in Spanish with English surtitles and will run from May 9th through June 9th. Get your tickets now at galatheater.org or call 202-234-7174.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds, and I'm here with Keith, co-star of my upcoming film, If, only in theaters May 17th. Do you want to tell people the big news? All right, I'll do it. Sign up now and you'll get unlimited for $15 a month and 6 months of Paramount Plus Essential Plan on us. MintMobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 equivalent to $15 per month. Unlimited over 40 gigabytes per month. Face lower speeds. Videos at 480p. Active Mint customers by 531.24 get 6 months of Paramount Plus Essential Plan. Auto renews after 6 months. Offer ends May 31st, 2024. Separate Paramount Plus registration required. Terms and conditions apply if rated PG.
Well, speaking of transportation, Ash, what's going on with these changes to DC's buses and trains? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so it seems like there could be some quite hefty changes coming. For more than a year, Metro's been working on a new plan for the bus system, trying to make some big changes to, make things better, make things make more sense, make buses move quicker. It's called the Better Bus Network. And last week they dropped, the first outline of the proposal. I think the biggest takeaway is the proposal calls for the elimination of 600 of the 10,000 stops in the whole Metro bus system, which is pretty big cuts. But I think the idea is that they're taking away stops that are maybe close to other stops. So maybe you have to walk a little farther to get to the stop. But once you're on the bus, it's not, stopping every 5 seconds, which I guess can definitely slow it down. Yeah, it's a lot of changes.
If you've ever been late on a bus that's going down Georgia Ave and it's stopping every foot while you're screaming internally, screaming in your head.
Yeah, I used to take the bus to work all the time, and it'd be early in the morning, and you'd check the app and it'd be it's going to be here in 1 minute. And you're like, great, you're going to walk out to the stop and it's pouring rain, and you get out there and it's gone and you're standing there for 20 minutes. And then finally you get on the bus and feels like you stop literally every block. I kind of went through it and tried to put together a pros and cons list. So some of the pros that I found were more service during off-peak hours and weekends. So if you're someone who rides the bus, maybe you have to get to work at a weird time, or you're working on weekends, or you just like taking the bus to go out on the weekends, as maybe we all should do more. That'll be better for that. It's going to have more service to hospitals and schools and grocery stores. So I think it's trying to mold the routes to make it so it's just easy for people to do their day-to-day stuff via the bus, which is cool. And then it's also going to encourage people to take the bus to fast-growing areas, quote unquote, like National Harbor. The cons, like I said earlier, you're going to have to walk a little bit farther in a lot of cases because they're getting rid of 600 stops. My old stop was literally, I would walk out of my house and my bus stop was right there. And that was awesome. But there was also another stop a block and a half away. Hopefully in most cases, just walking another block and a half. But I can see that being, if you're older or if you have a disability, maybe that can be tough if you have to walk a little farther. It's bringing more service to off-peak hours and weekends, like I said. So that's going to bring down service at peak hours, which also doesn't sound great. And then they're just going to cut service from places with low ridership altogether. So it kind of seems like a kind of thing where it's like, we're trying to make it better, but to like add service places, we have to take it away. There's only so many buses. Nate, are you a bus rider at all?
I have ridden the bus. It's interesting. I'm more of a metro fan, but I'm more than willing to walk, the 10, 12 minutes it takes for me to get from my apartment to the train station. But I honestly will also sometimes find myself walking farther to get on the train than I will to take the bus. That might be nearby or more convenient. I don't know what do I ascribe that to, but I fully hear, the folks who are maybe mobility impaired and don't have the leisure or the privilege to get to a metro station, or, maybe they use a bus to get to the metro station, and to see that, 600 stops, that's, as you say, it was like 10,000 stops overall. That's like 6% of their, offerings, which was a big sum when you're talking about the entire region of stops. On the flip side, when I have been on the bus, like sitting on a bus and it's stop after stop and it's after stop. And I'm like, some of you folks could have, gotten off.
Right.
If we all would have banded together and identified, 2 stops out of these past 10, that would have been better. That would have allowed us all to get to our destinations faster too.
Nate, this is how I know that you're somebody who has been late on a bus a time or two in your life, because you start thinking, like, how could this be better? First of all, how is it not my fault that I'm late? How it's
right. No,
the bus and everybody on the bus? And what could we have all done differently?
The bus mutiny. All right, guys, we're all going straight down to the convention center.
Right. Let's all just stick it up. Or, if you're on the next stop after, just hold on and, we'll get to there together. But, and the buses, I think, are certainly more accessible by design to a lot of folks. And so to have that kind of pared back. At the same time, though, Metro and transit agencies across the country are facing huge setbacks right now with funding. This COVID funding that kept them going for so long is running out, if not completely gone. But the ridership isn't what it was. You have folks, working in the office fewer days a week. They're not relying on transit, or they're not taking transit as frequently as they did prior to the pandemic. And it's causing entire systems to figure out how can we best address, how can we still provide this service in a means that's more replicable and applicable to the ridership, which it's kind of hard to do, right?
Well, Nate, speaking of Metro, Ash, are there changes coming to the trains as well?
Yeah, these are more aesthetic changes, but they're getting rid of the old trains on the Metro, the 2000 series, as they're called. They were in the squadron of trains since 1983. They're the ones with like the very vintage looking like orange and yellow seats. And they're finally retiring them. So it's been like, over 40 years? Rest in peace, man. I love those trains. They were always like the coolest ones to get on and like kind of feel like you were going back in time a little bit. And maybe controversial, I loved that color scheme more than I like the new color scheme of the seats.
I agree with you.
What are they now, like blue and maroon? Like, it's, I don't know, a little more boring. I think the orange, like old school ones were, I don't know, really giving like conversation pit in like an old school house or something. So yeah, rest in peace, the 2000 series. Hopefully the new trains can live up to their aesthetic heights.
Weighing in with soybeans and the baby show, straight out of Norburn, Missouri, we have Soybean Festival. From Hayward, Wisconsin, at 73 years young with the world's largest muskie statue, put it together for Muskie Fest. Finally, packing a punch with fire dancing and a pet costume contest, the Roseau, Minnesota Fall Harvest Fest. One of these festivals could win $100,000 in the Cenex Hometown Throwdown. You decide. Cast your vote at CenexHometownThrowdown.com. Cenex, powered locally.
Okay, well, random question for each of you. Do either of you have experiences with using dating apps? Is this something you've ever experienced?
Of course.
It's how I met my current fiance, actually.
Oh, wait, what app? First of all, congratulations. What app?
Thank you. It was Tinder, and it was 6 years ago.
Wow.
Before Tinder, I guess, maybe went downhill. I don't really know.
I love that. I have also met, an ex, but a long-term ex on Tinder. So, like, I don't agree with the stigma of like, oh, we have to make up a reason or like make up a story of how we met. It's like,
we met in the library.
Oh, right. I know it's funny because I'll say sometimes, we met in a coffee shop because that was, he and I first met at a coffee shop. That was the first, our first date was that. But I don't know. I feel like with the dating apps, but it is so much you get what you put into it kind of thing, I feel like. But also our location, we were on, college campus and we were both looking for that kind of a more long-term relationship. And I feel like in a city like DC, you have so many people looking for so many different things. It's a lot harder to kind of get, I don't even know how you feed through, the vast quantity of folks.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, Nate, that if you happily met your partner or your fiance on a dating app, you might have kind of caught the last lifeboat as the Titanic was sinking. You got one of the last seats. This is according to TikToker Kira Sullivan, who says if you met your partner on an app 2 years ago, you got the last seat on the last lifeboat, leaving the sinking Titanic, because most people are kind of abandoning dating apps right now. People are feeling burnt out by them. They're kind of worried about the amount of work and effort and screen time it takes to feel like you're making any traction there, which really speaks to what you just said, Nate, about getting out of them what you put into them. And a lot of people are sort of moving toward in-person interactions. There's been a bunch of new services that have essentially launched events for dating specifically. Sarah Goldenberg, an Alexandria resident who launched a local event series called Singles on Social DC, says that people are craving more authentic human interaction instead of just swiping on apps all day long. Her event series really helps people in DC gather and meet at local bars. And she first got inspired to create this when she was frustrated about the constant screen time that required, meeting somebody online, so that it felt like a second type of job in some ways.
Yeah, I totally feel the second job thing. Like, it can be a dark hole sometimes that you fall into with the dating apps where you're just like, oh my God, like this again, going through it, swiping through, match, doesn't work out. So I can definitely see people moving more towards the in-person stuff. It's like the cycles of life, it's like the same stuff comes back, and then maybe in 10 years we'll all be back on the whatever the new dating app is in 10 years, where it's like AI hologram, you're meeting through the brain chip or something crazy like that.
It's funny that you say that, because just last week the former head of Bumble was being interviewed, and she said that there's a future not too far down the line where your AI concierge, I think was the word that she used, will do the dating for you. Literally, there's a Black Mirror episode about that, but we don't have to get into that.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, if we want to go down the dystopian path, these dating apps are effectively, they're marketing our ability or our desire to be, appreciated by others. And there's like these and they're companies, right? They're trying to make money at the end of the day, but they're making money off of our desire to meet and connect with other people. And so you'll have to pay these premiums to literally match with or talk to the quote unquote more attractive people.
Right.
That is also like determined by algorithms. It's determined by, data inputted by humans. But like, you are ranked, and the dating apps all deny this, but like we all have like a ranking on there. And they're only going to show you, a certain ranking of people based on, how you're ranking amongst others too. And it's like, the more I've read about dating apps and the business model behind it, it's the more I want to, like, truly the last two lifeboats out of the Titanic, right? My fiance and I think we lucked out, but it just doesn't sound good. And I don't know.
Yeah, you really have to play the game, and like, it is kind of like a video game in a weird way where you have to like learn the rules and like.
I mean, I guess everyone's looking for different things in dating apps, but like for us, it was, who do I want to spend the rest of my life with kind of thing. And to kind of gamify that or to put it behind a paywall with who that potential person might be is just like, I don't know. Doesn't feel good.
In an Axios piece about this that I read, they were talking about how DC specifically is finding more and more singles who are gravitating toward these in-person meetups. The company Eventbrite said that dating and singles events in DC grew 43% from 2022 to 2023. So you have all these people who are gravitating toward in-person events. And I think that, Nate, your point is a really salient one, because these events you might have to pay to attend, but if you are serious about a dating app, you need to you're probably putting money into it. These algorithms, they intentionally only show you the duds because they want you to keep swiping. They want you to pay more, and that's how they're making money off of you. And like, their business model really exists to keep you swiping, keep you on the app. And so that's something important to remember, that even though it does involve paying to go to these in-person events in DC, dating apps are free in a kind of way, but not free in another kind of way if you really think about it.
In a way, and I feel like that freeness actually kind of cheapens the product in a way, because it's just so available, anyone can do it. Whereas these social in-person events, the people going to them are intentionally going because they want to not be single. They want to try and find someone. And so maybe there's a better compatibility or a better chance percentage-wise that they could actually find someone that is looking for what it is exactly that they're looking for. Because again, with the dating apps, like, there's so many people saying they're looking for one thing, and they're not. They're looking for something either completely different or just like tangentially related to what it is that you thought they were looking for, and that's why you swiped on them or said that you matched with them. Whereas you go to a physical event, the event is, what it is, but it's in the setting and the context that everyone else here is for that kind of clear, I would think, intention. So
At least they have to lie to your face in that situation.
right. Well, no, but that's so true though, right? Like it's so easy to just like ghost people online and just stop talking to them. There's no, real physical or emotional kind of penalty for doing so. But to do that in person is obviously takes more of you, and it should, but it's definitely more real. And I think could probably be a big benefit.
God, online dating in DC sounds just about as frustrating as a bunch of plane delays out of DCA. Nate, Ash, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Bridget.
Thanks so much for having us. Thanks, Bridget.
That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.